Hey everyone, it
Hello.
is Marcia and Michelle, and this is Show Me Mysteries. Ooh,
Something a little new, a little different.
yes, where we talk about unsolved murders, mysterious disappearances, Bigfoot, cryptids, Mothman,
Whatever.
whatever. Yes, all of those things. Tonight, we are going to talk about the mysterious disappearance of Steven Kubeck. And before we get started, of course, I want to say thanks to everyone that is logging on. If you are joining us live, we appreciate you taking time out of your Wednesday evening. Normally, we broadcast on Friday, but we just wanted to shake up everybody's schedule and just do a Wednesday night.
Well,
Um,
it's May Day, first day of the new month.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. And if you're watching us on the replay, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to watch us on whatever day you're watching us.
Absolutely.
Uh, Thank you to our military and our men and women in blue for keeping us safe. The world is going crazy right now, lots of
Yeah.
things happening. Just know that we appreciate you. We know the sacrifices that you make. And we know without you, we could not be sitting here this evening talking about this crazy disappearance of this young man. And again, if you are just joining us, we're going to be talking about the mysterious disappearance of Steven Kubeck. I want to say hello to Linda and Bev. I see you're on a Wednesday night, no less.
Yep. Hello.
Okay, Steven Kubeck.
And I'm going to apologize up front because I butcher his name every time I try to say it. So let me just throw that out there
We'll
now.
just call him Steve.
I
We'll
can
just
do
call him.
Steve.
We'll just call him Steve.
Okay.
So, Steven Kubeck was a 24-year-old student at Hope College um, up in the Holland, Michigan area, which, by the way, is where Michelle's got some relatives.
Mhm.
And that's where they do like the Tulip Festival, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's next week.
Yes. So if you're ever in Holland, Michigan, the second week of May, go see the tulips. Although that would make sense. Holland, tulips, I got it.
Well, all the tulips come from the Netherlands.
So there you have it.
There you go.
So Stephen was a 24-year-old, like I said, college student at Mount Hope College there in Holland, Michigan. He was set to graduate in just a couple of months. It was February 19th, 1978. He told his college roommates that he was going to go out and do some cross country skiing, which was not unusual for him. He was going by himself.
Yep.
So he took off. He did not return. So they launched a search for him. And this is where the whole story is crazy. The whole story is crazy, but this is where the craziness starts. So when they go searching for him, they find his skis and something else, Michelle. It wasn't his
His
backpack.
Yeah. It
Well,
was
they
the
found the
country.
backpack the next day, but they found his.
It depends on which news story you read and who's telling the story, because some say snowmobilers found the skis and the backpack together. Others say it's a little different.
Oh,
Um,
you're right. I got to back up there because they didn't immediately search for him. The snowmobilers found it.
yes, yes.
Yes. So the snowmobilers find the skis in the backpack and footsteps that go another 200 yards
Hmm.
towards the lake or out onto the lake, which is frozen. But then the footsteps just stop. They just
Yeah,
stop.
it doesn't look like they struggle or anything, and it's just literally stopped and poof, gone.
Yeah, he's just gone, sucked up into the universe or whatever. Anyway, they launched a search. They did not find him initially. They thought he may have drowned in Lake Michigan.
Yep.
But there was no evidence really of that because where his footsteps stopped on the lake, it was still frozen solid.
Very, yes.
Yeah, and so he didn't just fall into the water or fall through a hole. He just disappeared. Now, that's the first crazy piece of it. So they search for him, they don't find him, but 14 and a half months later, he shows up on the doorstep of his aunt, who is 30, who lives 30 miles away from his parents, which is 600 or 700 miles away from where he disappeared.
Right. They were in Massachusetts.
Yeah, they're in Massachusetts. So 14 and a half months later, he just shows up at his aunt's house. He said he woke up in a field wearing clothes that didn't belong to him, with a backpack that wasn't his, that had signs in it. You know how hitchhikers back in the 70s used to hold the signs up that said San Francisco or whatever. He had some signs in it. He had some maps. And he had a shirt from, was it Wisconsin? A Wisconsin
Yes, in Wisconsin marathon.
Yeah, that wasn't his. He said he did not remember anything. The last thing he remembers is that he was, and make sure I get this right, Michelle, that he was fatigued. Is that what he said?
He said that he thought that his disappearance, or the reason he had disappeared, is due to dehydration and being disoriented. And that kind of led to his blackout, as he calls it.
And so for 14 months, he has amnesia and apparently is hitchhiking all across the country. But they have still not really gotten to the bottom of where he was for 14 and a half months.
Correct.
Now, he is alive today. He is a clinical psychologist with a PhD practicing up in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know.
Yeah, and one of the interesting thing is, even though he was missing for an entire year, they never declared him dead. And so when he did show back up,
his parents never believed he was dead. His mother just wouldn't accept the fact that he was dead. So now when he showed back up, he was in good health. He had no injuries. He wasn't malnourished. He, just like he had run out to the grocery store and come back. But when he woke up in the field, he didn't know exactly where he was. So he started hitchhiking to, I guess there's a little town there, and he asked a passerby where he was, and they said, I think he was in Pittsfield.
That's where his parents lived. He actually found out that he was in what was it? Let me look here. Great Barrington, which is about 20 miles from there.
Yeah. And he, for whatever reason, after 14 and a half months with amnesia, he realized that his aunt lived in Great Barrington.
Right.
So that's how he ended up at her house. So I don't know. There's a lot about this story that makes me go, Because at first, when I first heard the story, and I heard the story years ago, I'm thinking, okay, he got sucked up by aliens, or he went through some kind of a time warp or something, right? He went into another dimension because his footsteps just stopped. There's no indication, that he backed back out or anything. But then he agreed to have a physical examination, but has always declined to have a mental evaluation.
Right.
And to me, that's a little suspect.
Right. And also, in 79, after he was found, he told reporters that he was going to try to retrace his steps. But if he has no memory of that, how are you going to retrace the steps?
Yep. And it seems to me, and I couldn't find it when I was doing research for tonight, but it seems to me that through the years, I did hear or saw an article or something about a woman picking him up hitchhiking out in California, that he was going to San Francisco. Like I said, I couldn't find that article this time, but it seems to me that there was a woman that picked him up. Um, I know they checked this Wisconsin marathon that he had the shirt from.
Hmm.
He was not registered under that name at the
But
marathon.
if he had amnesia, he wouldn't know what his name was.
True. True. So anyway, like I said, it's a little suspect to me. Um, let me see what else I have gotten here that I need to make sure.
So did you come across anything about some the day before the snowboarders found his skis, the poles, and his backpack, about a couple that had seen a young man that fit the description, but he wasn't alone?
Wasn't he with a young girl?
Yes.
He was with a young girl. But that doesn't explain how he got from where he was with no footsteps. See, the footsteps are throwing me. See, that's the thing. The footsteps just going to a point and then just stopping with no indication that he backed back out or anybody else was there. That's what's thrown a wrench into this whole thing for me. Now, he did write a book called The Disappearance of Steven Kubeck. And
He did?
yes, he recently,
Oh, okay.
yeah, wrote a book. And I was watching an interview of him on The Missing Enigma, which is a YouTube channel. So y'all can go out there and check that out. There was an hour-long interview with him, but the fellow whose name I cannot remember that runs that YouTube channel, he was not allowed to ask Steve anything about the disappearance or where he was during that 14 months, which again, I think is pretty odd.
Especially if that's what it was about.
But he told on this interview, during this interview, that if people wanted to know what happened to him, they'd have to buy the book.
Now, see, I came across that where he wrote a book called Meta-Mathematical Foundations of Existence.
Yes.
Godel, Quantum, God, and Beyond.
Yes, he's written several spiritual books, which, of course, you know, if he was sucked up by aliens or went through another dimension, he probably had something to say. But I don't know. And Bev, that you're exactly right. If he doesn't remember, how could he write a book? But during this interview, and the interview was in June of 2023, I believe, so it's fairly recent.
Oh.
He said that it all just, you know, started coming back, which maybe it did. Maybe it did. But I don't know. I think the whole thing is suspect.
Well, sure, because you know how they identified the backpack? Did you come across that little bit of information? It wasn't a driver's license or school ID or anything like that. They came across a dentist bill that was inside the backpack.
And the interesting thing about the backpack, what was in the papers anyway in 1978, is that the backpack was found, and again, you know, like Michelle said, it depends on which news outlet reported it. But one of the news outlets said that the backpack was found in an area that had already been searched the day before, and it wasn't there. And then the following day, all of a sudden, it shows up.
Which is interesting if it was the snowboarders that found it first, and that's how they reported him missing. It's just kind of odd.
I'm just saying, the whole thing is suspect.
I hear the Law and Order dun-dun in the background.
The whole thing is suspect. So
yeah.
I kind of want to know what you all think about it. Could he have gone through a time warp? He absolutely could have gone through a time warp. I mean, could he have gone through this time warp, had amnesia for 14 months, and then all of a sudden, when he shows up in Great Barrington, it clicks something in his mind. He realizes his aunt lives there, even though apparently for 14 months he didn't know his name. I don't know.
So, let's see. There was something else that I read that was very interesting. So he disappeared in February of 78. He came back in March
May.
of 70. Oh, May of 79.
May of 79.
So there was a report that the first week of March in 78 that his mother called the state police to say, I'm just going to read it here directly, and we can try to put the source here in just a minute, but to say that a friend of the family had been getting phone calls directing them to make phone calls of their own in connection to the disappearance. The names and or numbers given to the family by the anonymous callers were redacted in a report, in one of the police reports. And let's see, in one case, the person who called the family friend gave them a number and said they could reach Steven there, but when they called, the number was disconnected. But the mom went through older phone bills and found that same phone number back in September of 77, 6 months before he disappeared.
So what do you make of that?
But he called her from that number back in 77, but she didn't know who it belonged to or where he was at the time.
So do you think that he had some assistance?
It possible.
And Bev, I see your comment there about losing himself for a while, and I am leaning towards that. Either he intentionally did it, although again, see the footsteps, they have me baffled. Did
you ever come across any pictures of those footsteps? Did they take them?
No, and that's what I was just getting ready to say. I haven't seen the pictures of them. So maybe he did walk back over them and disappear. Now, he says at the time, 1979, when he showed back up, that he wasn't under any kind of stress or anything at school. Mm-hmm. He was getting ready to graduate. He had a good relationship with his mom and dad. However, his Twitter feed shows someone that doesn't seem to be quite with it. If you go out, because yes, I did stalk him. Yes, I did. If you go out there and take a look at his Twitter feed, he's kind of odd. So I don't know what to make of this one. I'd like to see the photos of the snow and the footsteps. Like I said, could he have gone through another dimension? Yes, he absolutely could have. But I'm kind of leaning towards he either had a mental break or he intentionally disappeared, although who knows why he would intentionally disappear if things were as he claimed, that he wasn't under any stress, his home life was good.
But that actually makes sense, only because a rope and a helicopter, but people may have seen that. I don't know. And that's pretty elaborate and to keep quiet. But going back to what you just said, maybe he had a mental break because I saw where like the dean of the college he was going to kind of referred to him as him and his friends were weird.
Yeah.
He had girlfriends, but they were all international. They weren't any in the United States. They were in Germany or wherever. And that even just the little line that was put in there about how he played Dungeons and Dragons, which would have been about the time it was first coming out, And, maybe he did lose touch with reality and kind of fell into that fantasy world.
Yeah, Linda, I'm not convinced on the helicopter thing, because in 1978, that would have been a heck of a feat for a young man to pull off. Like right now, I could go down to the local airstrip and rent a helicopter. 78, it was a little bit different. I mean, could he have been airlifted? Sure, but I don't know. I don't know. Hey, Dawn, glad you could join us. We're all up in the conspiracy theory here on Steven Kubeck. But anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about this evening, was his disappearance and how crazy it was. Like I said, he's got this book because he claims that it has all come back to him now, but he won't discuss the details of it publicly. You have to buy the book. And this interview with the guy on the Missing Enigma, the YouTube channel, it was in June or July of last year. He wasn't allowed to ask about the disappearance or anything like that, which kind of defeats the purpose of interviewing the guy, I think.
Yeah.
Now, Steve says he doesn't want it to define him. That's why he doesn't ever talk about it. And he has not talked publicly about it.
And neither has his ex-wife.
Or his family.
Yeah, because, his parents are now deceased.
Yeah.
But they spent a lot of money investigating his disappearance. And you would hope that, he wouldn't put his parents through that. Whoops.
But, you and I both know we would spare no expense to find our children.
Oh, absolutely.
We'd do whatever we had to do. But yeah, I'm leaning more towards a mental break than anything else.
I don't know that it was money, because I don't know that he's making any money off of this, since he won't talk about it.
No, and I mean, it's been 45 years and he just now wrote the book. So yeah, I mean, he since 78, those original, or 79, I should say, those original news articles when he was found, he hasn't given any interviews about it. He just doesn't talk about it. And he still will not have a mental evaluation around it, which is another red flag to me, because I would think if I had amnesia for 14 and a half months, I'd do whatever it took to find out what I've been doing for 14 and a half months and who I've been doing it with. So,
well, and the other thing, the stuff that I was reading on it too, when he hitchhiked to get to the aunt's house, or his aunt, depending on where you're at in the country.
Yes.
They actually spoke with the guy who picked him up. And on the car ride from wherever he picked him up at to the aunt's house, he said, this guy never said anything about waking up on a grassy knoll. He never said anything about where am I, what am I doing, anything like that. He just wanted to go to his aunt's house. Which, if he woke up not knowing where in the world he was, wouldn't that be one of the first questions you ask? Where am I? Where am I going?
Well, I guess he did ask a passerby where he was. And then he bought a newspaper to see what the date was, which that's kind of odd too.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, glad you could join us. We're talking all conspiracy theories about Steven Kubacki's disappearance, because it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, and like I said, the one thing that really stumps me are the footsteps. If there was no evidence if it showed that he just walked there and then he stopped and then disappeared into thin air, how do you explain that?
But if it was a hoax and he really was trying to disappear for a while, depending on what those footsteps look like, if he backtracked and stepped in the same exact spot going backwards.
You know how far 200 yards is?
He had nothing but time. He goes on these excursions on his own.
If I was going to do a hoax, I wouldn't go 200 yards.
He was young.
I might go, I don't know, 25 yards.
but again, if he's thinking he's not in his right mind, that might have seemed like the thing to do. Because even though he was close to graduation, he really didn't have a major.
No, he didn't know. I think he said in interviews at the time that he was a history major, but he got a degree in German. He didn't
Well,
get
they
it.
also gave him an honorary degree because he wasn't there for graduation. And
Yeah.
he later went back to get the real deal.
Yeah. But if you're a history major, you don't get a German degree. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
how. I don't know
Well, and
how
he was
that
also
works.
journalism or something also, or worked in the library or something. I don't know. It is weird.
It's just a weird, weird disappearance. And like I said at the very beginning, originally I thought, ooh, maybe he crossed into a dimension and we had the whole time slippage going on. But the more I can't find out anything about it, the more suspicious I become about it.
Oh, yeah. And yes, Bev, they were cross-country skis because he was a cross-country skier.
Yeah. But he dropped his skis and his footprints went on another 200 yards.
Well, and even there's discrepancy on that too, because one of the articles I read said it was very odd that the skis were placed almost purposefully down, exactly 8 inches apart,
Yeah.
with the poles next to them and the backpack on top of the skis. And that's very specific. And the backpack was fully loaded with his gear.
So if he drops everything he had, now wasn't there an article? Hold on. Did I read an article that said that he went and got a haircut and something else? There were witnesses that saw him in another town and didn't know who he was. But he had gotten a haircut and something else, and they remembered him because he was dressed in ski garb.
Oh, I hadn't seen that one.
Yes, he was dressed in ski garb. So he was seen after the fact by 2 other people, and then by the woman out in California that picked him up hitchhiking. But those are just brief mentions in an article somewhere that I read.
But Bev, he wasn't on the skis walking out on the lake. It was literally just footsteps.
Footsteps.
And I don't know, carrying them out there, they would have disappeared with him if he truly disappeared in thin air.
Yeah. So what would make him take his skis off? That's question number 1. Why would you take off your skis and walk 200 yards and then get sucked up into the nether world? Hey, Rolanda, glad you could join us this evening. We are trying to figure out this crazy story. So you ski out there, you just go off skiing, which wasn't unusual for him. All of his friends said that. Him going out there by himself was not unusual.
Correct.
So we're good there. Then you ski out, you drop your skis in your backpack, you hike out 200 yards, you disappear, you show up 14 and a half months later, 700 miles away in a field that happens to be in the same town that your aunt lives in, which is very near your parents' home, within 20, 30, 40 miles of where your parents live, with no memory, with a backpack full of stuff that doesn't belong to you, wearing clothes that doesn't belong to you, with a vague recollection of running. He felt like he had been running.
Yes.
Hence the marathon shirt, the Wisconsin marathon shirt.
Well, and it makes you wonder, so if it was not really high profile locally, he reappeared and continues to live his life. Why is this such a big mystery, do you think?
I think it's a mystery because we don't know what happened to him, and he has not been willing to help us find out, I guess.
Okay, can I throw something at you to see if you've heard it?
You can.
The Michigan Triangle.
I've heard about it. I've
And
heard about it.
these footsteps were actually found in that, as
Yeah.
well as multiple sightings of UFOs,
Yep.
unexplained. I mean, if we're going to do conspiracy theory, we might as well go all in.
You think
But I wonder
aliens
if those
touch them
types
up?
of things that, because nothing has ever been explained, and if that's just one more thing they're adding to that hat of things.
Yep. And well, the conspiracy theorists have used that for years to explain it, that it was in the Michigan Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just too many, for me, there's too many red flags. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
when you look at like the Travis Walton story, he couldn't tell enough people what happened to him. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
nobody believed him.
Believed him, right.
Nobody believed him. And the same way with that guy, those two guys down, I want to say in Florida about the same time. We'll have to do them on another Show Me Mysteries. That young man and that older man that were on the pier fishing, and the UFO came down. They couldn't tell enough people what happened to them, even though they were ridiculed. And here you've got a guy missing for 14 and a half months that all he says is, I don't remember. I have this vague recollection of running, but I don't know where I've been.
Or he feels like he's been running for a long time.
Yeah. So, and Linda, there are no photos. The only photo I could find actually was of the search helicopter landing on the lake. But by then, you know, the snow had all been kicked up and stuff by the rotor blades. So there were no photos. And that's, you know, if I could see the photos of the footprints, maybe we could dissect it a little bit more. But no, there's no photos. Okay, so the two fellows were in Louisiana. I think you're right on that, Dawn, because the older man had that Cajun accent. So, but yeah, I just think the whole thing is suspect. My theory is he had some kind of a mental break for whatever reason, or he intentionally disappeared. Although, if his relationship with his family was as good as he says it was, and they said it was in the 1979 articles,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine why he would put his family through that, just disappearing. But you never know. People disappear on their own all the time.
Absolutely.
So, but that's what we know, folks, about the mysterious disappearance of Steven Kubeck. Now, part of me says, don't buy the book, Marcia. Because
Don't buy the book.
Don't buy the book, because that's what he's pushing everybody towards. But on the other hand, I wonder what the book says.
I have no idea. Sorry, I just found a different article that I was like, "Ooh, I haven't seen this one. Hold on, let me take a peek here." But it's actually some of the things that we've already talked about. It was somebody else that graduated from Hope College in '78. Says he didn't know him personally, but he remembers the rumors going around about the disappearance, and that perhaps he had been talking about disappearing at some point and wanting to be officially declared dead. And that whole retracing his footsteps in the snow to make it look like they only went in one direction. But again, there's no proof of any of it.
So I guess we're no closer to solving his mystery than we were when we started.
Oh gosh, no.
I just think it's all suspect.
Yes.
I think it's just all suspect. So, and yeah, Bev, I mean, you would start doing things months in advance, but there's no indication that he did anything to prepare for it. And, as far as getting his hair cut and whatever, that happened a couple of days after he disappeared. And the barber and somebody else saw him too. I forget what the other person, what he was doing with the other person, but they both made the same comment that it was odd. They remembered him because he was oddly dressed. He was dressed in a ski suit.
Which, if
So
he had those ski boots on, that's hard to walk around in those bad boys.
yes. And if he had the ski boots on and the snowsuit, in my mind, that would eliminate hypothermia and exposure.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because those pieces of clothing are designed to protect you from that stuff. So anyway, that's what we know about the mysterious disappearance of Steven Kubeck. He has written a book, if you are so inclined to go out and purchase it. I will actually post a link on the Facebook page, tell you how to get it. It's called The Mysterious Disappearance of Steven Kubeck. And watch the interview on YouTube. You can search Missing Enigma. That's the channel that it's on. It was in June or July of 2023. He's on there talking about just things in general. And the fellow that helped him write the book is being interviewed as well. And yeah, we got no cliff notes, Bev. Got no cliff notes. All suspect.
Yes.
Red flags flying everywhere. Those flags are flying.
Yeah.
So, but okay, I don't know. Let us know what you might want us to talk about the next time. I've got a couple of ideas, and I think maybe the Louisiana UFO abduction, because like I said, everybody knows Travis Walton's story, right? The logger in Arizona. Everybody knows that story. But the two fellows in Louisiana, that might be an interesting story to cover. So, but I just want to say thank you to all of you who have joined us this evening. I know Wednesday's kind of an odd time, but we appreciate you hanging out with us. And until next time, just